Each summer, after I was 3, my mother sent me to summer camp for 8 weeks. During at least 2 of those summers, I was the youngest child in the camp. A wonderful thing happened while my mother was driving me to camp when I was about 5 or 4. I was sitting in the back seat, and a friend of my mother named Edwina Black, who was also known as Aunt Edwina, was sitting in the front passenger seat. My mother was talking about me as if I had not been in the car. My mother was saying, "He drives me crazy. I'm happy to get rid of him." And from the back seat, my Aunt Edwina told me that she heard the little voice say, "I bet I could be a good boy if I lived with Aunt Edwina." And she thought about that, and she eventually decided she would take me to live with her.
Did she have kids?
No.
No, and she did a really careful study, you said,
Yeah.
first. Tell about that.
Yep. She went to the camp to talk with people there to see what kind of a kid I was, and they told her. That apparently didn't
What camp
discover
was
her. Campowak. That was Camp Agawam. Campowak was later. Anyway,
So-
long and the short of it is, the guidelines that she laid down were I'd be tested for intelligence at Harvard. My mother would pay all the bills, and my mother would not visit until Thanksgiving. And this was toward the end of the summer. Harvard testing went well, and they said I was the closest thing to a genius they'd seen. The bills were paid, and I often think that my time with Aunt Edwina saved my life.
Tell about what happened when you first went there. What did you do for the first 3 weeks?
I was naughty.
Yeah, tell the story.
What?
I was really
was just-
naughty.
Being normal like you'd
A
been.
brat.
Well, let's talk about it. You'd walk in the room and she said you'd
Throw
walk...
stuff around.
Really?
I'd take my clothes off and throw them around.
Really? I didn't know that stuff.
What did I do?
She said you knocked over
Oh, I knocked
lamps
stuff
and,
over. Knocked over
you know,
lamps,
that
things like
business of,
that.
Can you tell me how old you were again?
3,
4 or
4.
5. something
So you were
said.
going
4.
to camp and foster homes and you were only 3 or 4?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, you went right to the foster home.
So you went to the foster home and that was in the fall.
Yeah, just before he was 3.
Of when I was 2 years and 10 months old.
And were they an official foster home where they fostered
Oh, yeah.
other children?
They
No,
were?
well, I
No,
don't
I
know
don't
if they
think so.
were. The Norton family, they're
How did
really
your mom
nice.
find them?
And they owned all the school buses in the town. They had a huge farm up there in North Yarmouth.
They
North
lived right
Yarmouth.
right close to you, didn't you say?
Well, 4 miles, 5
4
miles.
So she just found these people and said, "I'm going to Sun Valley here, take my kids."
Yes. That's about it right there.
And then in the summer,
That was the first year of Sun Valley, we found out the other day.
Yeah.
in the summer she said, "Okay, let's send you off to camp."
Yes.
And she found a camp to take children overnight that young.
All summer long
She
for 8
probably
weeks.
paid them handily.
Yeah, my brother wasn't there. I was there.
So before you ever went to school.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And Edwin knows before you went to school.
Oh, yeah. Well, let me tell you a
not sure
summer
about
camp
that.
story.
Okay.
Because you said you weren't reading, and that was why she had you tested, right?
Oh, I
that
don't
right?
know
Do I
that.
remember
I don't
that
think that's
correctly?
why she had me tested.
think
I
so?
think she just wanted me to be tested.
She
In any
taught
event, to
you
make a
read.
long story short, 2 summer camp stories. One was all the kids had wagons. They'd always be able to use wagons to come down off this hill from the big lodge where we ate meals and stuff. Whoa, down to the valley, and they wouldn't let me use them. And I was too little to be able to get them to let me use one of the wagons. I wanted to use a wagon, they wouldn't let me. So I decided I'd blow up the camp. So I started pounding rocks together over by a tree where there was roots went this way. Pound the rocks together all day long. Watch those guys down over the hill. Sweep the gunpowder, I thought it was, and under the roots of the tree. Go back there the next day and pound the rocks. And I think I was going to be able to get it to blow up. Blow up the camp, blow up me, blow up the world. Anyway, it didn't blow up.
Did you light it?
I didn't know how to light it.
So you just thought the gunpowder was going to work.
I figured
You
someday
piled
it would
enough
blow
of it
up.
under the tree.
Someday. There was another story about, well, 2 other stories. One was about eating worms. And another kid and I were in a pond one day when it was raining. And he said, have you ever eaten a worm? And I said, no. And he said, we should try it. And I remember biting into a worm.
Gross.
Didn't taste too bad. I remember another time I had to go to the bathroom really badly. And the girls' bathroom was closer than the boys' bathroom. So I went into the girls' bathroom and they yelled at me. I went to the bathroom anyway and got out of there.
That's pretty funny.
Oh dear.
You should tell about that letter you wrote to your mother. And then told her about it as an adult and what she said. You remember that?
No.
Okay. Well,
Help
when
me, I got
you
a vague...
said that when you were about 10 years old, you had written, you were supposed to write to your parents.
From
some-
camp?
From
Or-
camp, yes.
Well, what he wrote was, I hate it here. Please come and get me. Take me home.
Yeah.
Hey, I copied that letter and sent it to you when I was at camp.
Yeah.
Well,
They didn't come get me.
No.
I'm
I know,
just saying.
Neither did she. But when he was an adult, many years later, he found.
She found.
She found.
And she said, what's this?
And she was denying
That he sent
that
it.
he had sent the letter. It's in his handwriting. Now,
Yeah.
how can you figure that?
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Well, Mom said that you couldn't come get me because they said, oh, this is normal and this is common and everybody does it. You can't come get them.
That
but they
sounds
would have
right.
lost all their clientele.
That's right. They had an
I
investment.
never went back. Thank God.
Your mother and dad listened to you.
No, they didn't.
They didn't,
They
even though you
made me
didn't go
stay
back.
the whole summer, and then I got to get home, and then I.
But you never went back after that. So they listened eventually.
Yeah, but Ellen
Oh,
was
there's the
begging not
dog
to go
again.
back the second year, and then she went back, had a great time.
Oh.
Oh, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go back. I told you I drove over my maternal grandmother's foot repeatedly while she was having tea with her friends.
But she was having tea, and you drove over her.
Oh yeah. I do remember this scene.
You have to be able to get attention somehow, you know.
Yeah. And the person that I found out about it from was Mrs. Yale, even though I do remember it after Mrs. Yale told me about it. And she was the house mother at SAE, which is a fraternity at my college where I went to college. And I was an angry little brat. Anyway, I also remember drawing a swastika on the sidewalk outside of school where I was being bullied. I think the swastika must have served like some kind of a symbol of rebellion and anger. Many of the
Remember drawing
episodes, I remember drawing it.
What school was
I
that?
had chalk, probably in the first grade, or I don't really know. It might have been kindergarten.
So the
In
war was
Duxbury.
over.
The
Oh, in
war-
Duxbury.
No, the war was on. The war was on.
You were in Duxbury going to kindergarten.
My life was chopped up.
Okay.
There was foster home time, there was Duxbury time, there was school time,
Summer
was-
camp.
and it was summer camp, and it was chopped up. And I do not have a good fix on,
When they
you
were.
know, whether
You
it
know
was
what I
3 or
get.
4
They
or
all
5.
kind of blend in.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it sounds like your mother just found ways to pawn you off on everybody else
Yeah.
all the time,
Yeah.
as long as she could.
Okay. So, I have many happy memories about being in Duxbury with Aunt Edwina and Uncle Richard. One memory is going to preschool and sometimes having to sit in the back of the driver's seat of the driver's car. Oh yeah. She was a parent of one of the other children in the car. And there were always several children in the back seat. There was usually a boy named Rudolph who would pinch the people sitting next to him. And I had known about this pinching activity from times when I was in the front seat and heard the girls screaming after being pinched by Rudolph. Rudolph and I were the only boys in the car. First time I sat next to Rudolph in the back seat, he pinched the girl on his left side first, and while she was screaming, I think he started to pinch me. And I didn't know anything about punching him in the face, but I punched him in the face and I made him cry. And I very clearly remember the driver thanking me for taking care of Rudolph. I don't remember if Rudolph ever pinched anyone again, but I have a hunch that some of my misbehaviors later on, and perhaps some of my attempts to help the underdog, have had to do with my being rewarded for punching Rudolph.
Yep.
I've got lots of stories about that. Okay, gardener stories. Percy the gardener. There are 2 stories I have with waking up the gardener. The first gardener I remember was Percy. He was a quite tall guy, a little bit hunched over, toward the end of each day, my mother would say, "Go find Percy. It's time to take him home." And I knew that Percy would be asleep by now. So I said, "Go wakey Percy, takey Percy home." So he felt the need of a nap late in the afternoon. I always knew where to find him. So I went out to get him, woke him up, and he got in the car with me and my mother. The second story has to do with another gardener named J. Napoleon Arsenault III.
Did he wear a hat?
Oh yes, with a brim tipped up like that and tipped off a little to the side like that. Nappy. And he could stand there and look at you and go, whoop! And he'd flip right over backwards and land on his feet. And my brother and I tried and tried and tried. He did that in the garage. We had a concrete floor.
Ooh.
My brother and I got a few raspberries from that concrete floor.
Oh, you did it?
Wow.
Tried to.
Didn't ever
Tried to
succeed.
imitate
That's a bad
Nappy.
place
You
to
got
do
a
that.
high IQ score and you're
Yeah.
trying to flip a cement garage?
You
Raymond,
got me.
Raymond Banfield would say, "No bet, they got all them college degrees, but they ain't got no common sense."
He was right.
Oh dear, I'm glad I met Raymond.
Yeah.
I really am. Well, Nappy was our gardener for many, many years. I remember being at one point told he made $48 a week, which was more than anybody in town. Each Monday he'd come to work.
He did?
Oh yeah. Looking a little bit dilapidated. He was not ashamed to say he had lots of alcohol to drink and now and then got into a scrap with somebody else. Very
Was
small,
he a short man? Oh, okay.
little guy with a greasy baseball cap that he always wore with the visor pointing upward. His nose was very strange looking, probably from injuries he had during fights.
Okay.
He was very agile and quick. I think he was able to hold his own in many of those scraps with larger people.
Where was he from? Do you know?
From Yarmouth, right up the road on. The name of that road, I remember. Oh gosh. I can't remember stuff today. Anyway, he lived up that road. Lillian Sawyer lived up that road. A lot of other people. I don't know if the Giggys, I think the Giggys may have lived up there for a while. Can you remember a last name? I mean, can you imagine a last name Giggy? Anyway,
What's so funny about Giggy?
it's an unusual name. Blanche Giggy, and Eldred Giggy. I don't
It was a
think.
funny name.
I think they lived up there for a while,
What
but
do you
then
think
they
their
moved.
heritage was?
Well, I don't know about that. Okay,
I
okay.
don't know
Now
where
let
the
me
name Giggy
see.
comes from.
Might be French Canadian, eh?
Yeah,
Like G-I-G-E-A-U
G-E,
or something like
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe they just were pronouncing it different.
Okay,
Yeah,
one day I
yeah.
come home from school. I'm on my bicycle. It's grade school. I go in the house. I look around. My mother's not there. And I find Nappy dead in the hallway. Dead body. I go out that front door. I jump on my bicycle. I ride down to the Doyles' house. I unload off my bicycle. Let my bicycle go off and crash into a tree. Run into the house. I gotta use the telephone. I gotta use the telephone. Nappy's dead. He's dead in the hallway. So they said, okay, go ahead, use the telephone. I did. I called Dr. McDonald.
And they were totally calm?
Everybody was calm. Dr. McDonald laughed. And I said, Nappy's dead in the hallway. He said, yeah, dead drunk. And so I said, you gotta come, he's really dead. So he came and he brought Susan and Timothy, my dearest buddy when I was a little kid. And we went into the hallway, and there's Nappy, totally dead in the hallway. And Dr. McDonald got him out in the car. Now the car was an old Plymouth, and they had a name for it, but it had a front seat with a little roof over it like that. And then the back seat, there was no back seat. There wasn't even a little flip-up thing in the back seat. A little space back there for your briefcase and stuff. And I was back there, and Timothy was back there. Susan was in between Nappy and Dr. McDonald.
Is Susan his daughter?
Susan was the daughter, and she was, 5 years older than me, something like that.
Okay.
Dear
Nice
girl.
person.
And Timothy was 7 months older than me, or 9 maybe. Anyway, Nappy was told what had happened, that I found him dead on the floor of the hallway. And then I called Dr. McDonald, and Nappy said, I don't like it. I don't like it. And he kept on going, I don't like it. I don't like it. He told on me. He kept on reaching in back there with his hand behind the seat. I'm going like that to dodge the big old grizzly hand. I came down.
He's trying to whack you,
Oh, grab me, whack me,
kill you.
pay me back for squealing on him. And for years after that, Susan and Timmy teased me by saying, "I'll like it, I'll like it."
Is Timmy the one you flew with?
Yeah, we flew many times
How?
More great common sense stuff.
with Batman
Or
capes and
practical
umbrellas and
physics.
stuff. Practical physics. Oh dear, we got a lot of bloody noses.
Any Billy Boots?
The Billy Boots was me, all by myself, jumping off the. I was gonna go up and jump off the barn. I got up there with an umbrella and I looked down. and I thought, no, this is too far
A
down.
little common sense.
So
Tiny bit.
I climbed down the barn roof, down the wall on the little steps we'd nailed there, down onto the shed roof, and I looked down. It was not a long jump. It was only about as high as from that beam down to the floor. So I took the umbrella like this, and I jumped off, and I had my Billy Boots on. The umbrella went and blew up upward, and I dropped into that mud so far I couldn't get my left Billy Boot out. I got my right Billy Boot out, but I couldn't get my left Billy Boot out. So I had to go back on a stocking foot to the house. Nobody ever found out about this till I told you guys.
Well, my kids wanted to go excavate.
Somebody did
Yeah.
excavate there.
Did you
I
think?
don't know if it was Ben and Zeke or
Never
Ellen
found
or
it,
you
huh?
Find
guys.
it?
Nobody ever found that Billy Boot. It was, if you ever do find it, it's a left Billy Boot.
Well, I wonder where the right one is now. We're going to have to go
I
search
took it
for
back to the
right
house.
one.
It was on my foot. Oh dear.
And then what about flying with Timmy?
Well, Timmy, the biggest time I can remember flying with Timmy was off a thing down at Homewood Inn. They had big houses down there that they would, rent out to people, and Betty Davis and Gary Merrill rented one out and things like that. Anyway, there were 3 stories. And we went up to the 3rd story, and we had a big Batman cape, which was a big beach towel that you tie around your neck. You see how you do it. Is you tie it around your neck, and then you grab this part, and then you reach out and grab that part, and then you jump off the railing, and you hold the cape like that, and you go like this, and you fly all the way to Cousins Island.
Oh, you're jumping off a house 3 stories high.
Yeah.
What's below you?
Whoa. Water.
How deep is that water?
Oh, 20 feet.
Oh, good. I'm glad
Yeah.
it's a house over 20.
Anyway, you dive off,
Yeah.
and the thing folds up, and it doesn't support you at all, and you hit the water hard, and you get a bloody nose. Didn't work.
Surface tension. You learned about a lot of things.
Yeah, I know. Practical physics.
Oh, and
Well, I had a lot of other experiences with practical physics before that. My first time flying was with a cardboard thing. And I can remember seeing those pictures of the Arabian Nights flying around on their flying carpets with their things around their heads, like this, wherever they want to go.
It's their
So one
fault.
day it was blowing in the fall out of the northwest, the way it frequently did, and I went out there with a cardboard thing. Oh, and I went running down across the backyard with this cardboard thing, drove into the wind like that, smash onto the ground.
it didn't work?
Didn't work. So the next time I went out, I don't know if it was that same fall or the next fall.
Because you have high IQ.
Yeah,
That's right. Well, but he
You're
saw
so
it
mean.
he saw it in the movies.
I saw it in the movies.
This
I went out
next
with
step?
I went
I
out
don't
with
know.
plywood.
Next time you should go out with
no,
brick.
that you should be able to fly like that, right? You
Take
saw
a
it in
brick
the
wall he
movies.
puts together. See that?
Well, the last time out there was with plywood,
Okay.
and that didn't work either.
Maybe you were thinking more about, maybe you thought there was perhaps wood in the Wright brothers plane or something. You thought
No, I
maybe
didn't
that
think
would
about
make it
that. I just
fly.
thought about these Arabian Nights
Yeah.
flying around on the.
You didn't
on
think
the
about that
flank.
being pretend.
No. High IQ, but stupid.
How old were you then?
Anyway,
So did that crush your fingers? Did
I
you
don't
land
recall
and-
fingers getting hurt, but I recall having a hard time breathing for a while.
And knock the breath right out of you.
Okay, learning to
Yeah.
swear.
But you can't give up when you've seen it in the movies.
No, learning to swear. I don't know if it was Percy the gardener or who it was, but I heard the S word.
What? Percy swore?
I think so, but I'm not sure. Because I had a white shirt on, I can remember. Walking across the lawn and stomp my right foot down and say, shit, 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 like that as I walked across the lawn. And somebody grabbed me. I don't know if it was a housekeeper or Percy or who it was, took me in to tell my mother, what did you say out in the lawn when you were stomping around with your right foot? I said shirt. I got spanked.
And that was Percy?
I don't know if it was
Oh, you
Percy
don't know if it was Percy.
or the housekeeper. It might have been
Okay.
Percy that took me in there. He didn't want me to talk like that. And then the next time I already told you about was when I said, fuck a nanny goat. That was not smart. So I got away with the F word, but I didn't get away with the S word. And since then, I haven't sworn at all.
You can see his lying career hasn't stopped.
Oh, I remember a good one. Here's many years later. We lived in Vail. I was teaching at McGill. It was a snowstorm. We had a Volkswagen Beetle, and for some reason, I take Toffer and Graham, the kids that lived down the road, and our boys out for a ride in the snowstorm. And we were down in the village, and we were going to go up the hill past the theater, up onto the Lakeshore Drive and drive back home. And I remember driving there and having a car stop at the theater in front of us at the foot of the hill. I needed speed to get up that hill, but the stopped car was in the middle of the road. Remember, I swore quite passionately in front of the two sons and two visitors, Toffer and Graham. None of them were older than 4. However, they practiced the phrase for about 30 minutes as we drove back home in the snowstorm. Eventually, the words were no longer recognizable, but the inflection and the passion, the consonants, the rhythm were easily recognized. And they began to demonstrate it to my wife. She recognized the particular swearing phrase that I had used.
You got
She
in
didn't
trouble?
spank me. I remember Timmy McDonald got stung on the penis
Yeah,
in the field.
yeah.
We're playing in the sand pit, and we freaked out. We thought he was going to die. And we ran back to the house, and that's a long run back to the house in our bathing suits. I pounded on the front door
And whose house? Timmy's house?
at our
or
house.
Your house.
Timmy, we were out in the field. Timmy got stung on the peepee. He's going to die. And there was laughter inside the house. One of them was Timmy's father, Dr. McDonald. Needless to say, Timothy lived. And I believe he's still alive when I wrote this.
He was still among you, huh?
Yeah, he had a PhD in some kind of chemistry. He was fishing down in Gloucester, and he's dead now. Dead now. Times I was stuck straight through, I've already told you about. One was when I was about 3, and the twin brothers stabbed the pitchfork through my foot. I don't know if that's on the film or not.
Yeah.
Okay. The other time, my brother and I were playing with toys. I was 10 or 11. We had teddy bears, and we had toy rifles about 7 inches long with bayonets. We got these rifles here at the Bunker Hill Monument. The 2 teddy bears were struggling with each other and trying to stab each other. My brother's teddy bear missed, and his bayonet went straight through my hand. Right through the hand. I don't remember a big deal made of that. I do remember delaying for a while before I told my mother, and Dr. Willie Freeman was involved with the cleanup and repair, and he gave me a tetanus shot that day.
Oh, so you did get a tetanus.
Oh,
shot. That
yeah.
must have been later.
The next day, my wife Madeline and I were out in our powerboat. We were quite far offshore, outside Seguin Island, and we saw a fire out at sea. And our little powerboat was a Boston whaler. When we were able to see it, and it was a very fast boat, we were able to get out there very quickly, and the fire was just really burning the powerboat to the waterline. 2 occupants were swimming, and just as we approached to pick up the swimming guys, a Coast Guard boat came roaring in from the east, and we reversed. And I put the engine in reverse to stay out of the way, and it got stuck in reverse. I shut the engine off, and I tried to fix it to get it to behave, took the cover off, noticed there was a heavy-duty spring holding a pin in place that needed to go into a part of the lever to shift the gears. So I compressed that spring with my finger. Ah! And the spring let go and went right through that finger, inside the fingernail from one side to the other.
Ugh.
And I took it out by myself,
Right there?
right there in the boat. We were a long way offshore.
Yuck.
And the Coast Guard was busy.
Did you get a
Anyway,
tetanus shot?
I may have said the bad word, the S word, perhaps even the F word at one point. In any event, I pulled myself together, used the pliers to get the pin out of my finger. More than a year later, I was giving a speech in Boston, and my finger became swollen. It was very uncomfortable. That was on the weekend. Maddy was there. Next Monday, I went to see a surgeon at the VA, and he opened up my finger, drained off all sorts of garbage.
That's something.
And I can still see what appears to be carbon dust left on both sides of that finger.
Can I see?
Both sides of the base of the fingernail. It's very thin now, very, very vague. You got to use your imagination.
Oh, I think I see it.
Yeah,
Let me
it's
see
there.
another finger. Oh, wow.
See?
Yeah.
It's really there.
Can I see?
It's at about the same distance back
Oh, yeah.
from
Yeah.
the, kind of near
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
edge of the change of color,
Right there.
you might say. of the
Okay,
nail
well, I already
head.
told you about the
Wow.
Vail's limousine.
Can I
hitting it-
pause for a second?
Yeah.
We're still sorting. We're still sorting. I don't know. Nordell said it's no sort, and I keep sorting. Aunt Edwina. What was her full name?
Well, Edwina, her first name, wow, I knew what it was. Anyway, her name when I met her was Black, Edwina Black. And then she married after she left Richard, which I wish she hadn't.
Guess how many husbands she had?
5?
Did she
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, at least one of them died, maybe two. And she divorced, was
Divorced
Richard
Richard.
an annulment or a divorce?
No, I think that was a divorce. That's so sad.
And was there another divorce or was that?
I think she might have divorced somebody before Richard.
Oh, I know. She ran off very early on to New York City and she became a photographer.
I remember that.
And then I think she did a quick marriage then. And I
Okay.
think that got annulled. And then I think there was Uncle Richard. That was a long time and that was a divorce, right?
I think so, Mary.
And that's
And then
the one
there
you
was a
were
guy
with.
who died. And then
Yeah.
I don't know about the fourth one, and Joe was the last
I
one.
remember Joe. I met Joe.
Yeah.
You did meet Joe?
Yeah, I met Joe. We went to the Kapok Tree restaurant in
Ah.
Florida with
Wow.
Maddy. And she told me
Okay,
about
I remember that restaurant too. Wow.
She told me about how she felt like she got cancer from being an interior decorator where she was always touching the
Wow.
fabrics that were treated with
Wow, that
formaldehyde.
Probably, there's a good chance of that.
And then I researched it that
Did you find it
carpenters who use
true? Yeah.
plywoods and things that are treated with formaldehyde had the highest rate of Hodgkin's disease of any profession.
You know that the Ellen Fine, do you remember her? She was my one of the executive directors at Orange County Mental Health when I was there. Her husband was a fine furniture maker, and he died. I don't know what kind of cancer, but he died. It was a very aggressive cancer, and I think that was probably why he died then. He was a nice man.
Aunt Edwina said she would touch the fabrics all the time, and then none of them were ever washed.
Yeah.
You know, it was a fresh fabric.
Yeah.
And then she said she got to a point where she would actually have an allergic reaction to
I can
touching them,
believe
and
it.
she had to wear gloves, but she preferred to be able to touch the fabric as part of it was the feel, and she couldn't
Yeah.
feel it with the gloves
Yeah.
on. And then she said when she had the chemo and the cancer treatment, her hair fell out and it came back red and curly.
Wow. Isn't that something? They're you know, when I used to walk into fabric stores, because
Yeah.
I did sew when I was young, immediate eye reactions and respiratory.
I had a bad reaction to lotion a couple times, you guys might remember. And the one time when I was pregnant with Allie, we walked into a furniture store, and I felt like every cell of my respiratory and my face was being attacked with little stingers. Like when you go underwater and you get attacked by the little stingers in the ocean when you're diving. It was
Wow.
that kind of feeling, but it was my face because my face was all puffy. Felt like every pore was
Oh,
open.
that sounds horrible.
And all the little specks came in and attacked.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's awful. That is
Boy, I haven't had any of those sensations at all.
Yeah, good thing.
Wow.
Okay, so she was married to a black?
Richard Black, yeah, nice guy. And he was the one that was with her when I lived with them.
He was a what?
He was the one who was her husband when I lived with him.
Okay.
Richard Black, Aunt Edwina and Uncle Richard.
And they never had kids?
No.
So how was she your aunt? Just called her
She's
aunt?
a distant, really, genetically a distant aunt.
On your mom's side?
Yes.
Huh. And they were good friends?
Yeah.
So she came one day to pick you up at camp with your mom?
Oh, no, to take me to camp from home. And that's where I made the announcement that I bet I could be a good boy if I lived with Aunt Edwina. And that led to the whole thing.
Yeah.
For which I am eternally thankful.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think that she saved my life.
Yeah.
She very well might have, because the regime there was friendly and stable.
Well, she was a natural mother. Absolutely the best natural mother that I can imagine. Tell her what she did when you came in and you knocked all everything
yeah.
out for the first
Anyway,
3
she
weeks.
spanked me.
No, you're jumping to the wrong thing. When you first arrived. Well, okay, so when he first arrived, she said whenever he entered a room, it was just mayhem. You know, that things did get knocked over and so forth. I'm sure that's how he got attention, you know. You get negative attention's better than nothing, right?
That's right.
And what she would do, she'd just hold him until he settled down. I mean, what an awesomely wise thing to do. And he would. He'd settle down after a while. She said after 3 weeks, never happened again. And he became a calm little boy.
But in there somewhere in the first 3 weeks, she spanked me.
Well, I thought it was after you went to school and you came home with the demerit system.
No, you got that wrong. I know you got that wrong. And she was sitting on the front steps crying anyway. And one of the neighbors came by to talk to her and comfort her and things like that. And then I came out, big tears coming down my cheeks. And she said, "Oh, I hear your Aunt Edwina spanked you." And I said, "I deserved it, didn't I?"
Now, she didn't want to spank you.
Oh,
You
she was-
insisted on it because
First
of
time
the
she ever
demerit
did.
system. I actually
Oh, it was the
remember.
demerits.
It was the demerit system. He came home from school and he said he wanted a system like they had at school. It was called a demerit system. And so she didn't want to spank him, but
I earned enough
he needed-
demerits to get spanked.
He
Did you work
needed
hard
to
to do it?
test
Yes.
the limits.
I do remember
and find
now.
out that it was safe. You know
Yeah.
how kids really need the edges. They need to know when they've gone over the edge, and they need to have some kind of consequence. And if they don't have it, it's not safe because they'll keep pushing until they get to the edge
Yeah.
or over it. And then if you don't ever give them to them, then they don't. It's just not as safe for them, or they keep pushing and going too far in their lives. So anyway, that's what he did. In his own little boy way, he knew what he needed. And he needed to push over the edge to find out that she would really do what she was supposed to do. And then he could feel safe. And he didn't ever have to act out again. She was
True.
awesome. And the other thing, then she did flashcards to teach him to
Yeah,
read.
she taught me how to read. I learned how to read really fast, way ahead of my grade level. And I think that when she started working with me, I really didn't know much about reading. But I got to the point where I could read super fast, and I think I've told Mary, I read the whole Bible and got hung up on the Tower of Babel and
Yeah.
in the Old
If you'd read
Testament.
Karen Armstrong first, you wouldn't have worried about it. But anyway, coming back to the other thing, she would, remember how you told me that you would be driving along in the car, and because they'd done the flashcards,
There was a
and
sign.
she'd ask the sign,
Yeah.
and he'd identify letters on the sign and stuff like that. So, I mean, she made it into a fun game.
Yeah.
Sort of a natural teacher like you are. I
Now,
mean,
is
I
Karen
think it's
Armstrong
really
going to tell me anything about the Tower of Babel?
She talks about a lot of that being symbolic rather than actual.
Yeah, but I don't like the symbolism of it. And I made
Wow.
that very clear.
I know. Oh well.
So how long did you live with Aunt Edwina?
2 years. Ballpark.
And you went to school where?
Down there in
Duxbury?
Duxbury, yeah.
Do you remember the address?
Of the school?
Of the house, the name of the school?
No, but if I went back, I could find the house right away. I can't quite remember the name of the school, of the little street.
What grades were you in?
Kindergarten and first.
And then what happened?
Mother took me back to Maine.
Why?
I don't know.
And
Who's
the
she
s-
talking to?
And the dog. And the summers you would also stay with Aunt Edwina then for those 2 years? Or did she send you to camp?
Oh, in the summers when I was at Aunt Edwina's, I stayed with her.
Oh. And what kinds of things? Do you remember it being a separate event? Was that when she was doing the flashcards or
She did that the whole time.
there's no, did you go on trips with her or
Mm-hmm.
remember any specific?
Well, to the beach at Duxbury, I know that. I don't think there were trips to any great destination. I think it was always, right around there.
Yeah.
We went to Plymouth Plantation, which isn't far away from Duxbury.
Yeah.
But that, we didn't go very far.
Do you remember what her relationship was like with our Uncle Richard?
Very good. Well, in my little boy eyes,
Yeah.
it was very good. And I was always just stunned that they got divorced. Stunned.
How old were you when they got divorced?
Probably 7.
Oh, so you were young.
I wasn't there. I was
Yeah.
living with my mother up this way.
Yeah. And did she continue living in Duxbury her whole life?
No, she divorced Uncle Richard, and I don't know where she went after that, but she ended up living in Florida, Tampa area, near where Maddy lives. And did you ever visit her down there?
Yeah, that's where I met her to go to dinner with
Yeah, that's
Joe or
right, too.
lunch.
That's right, too. Yeah, I've forgotten that you did that. That's nice that you did it. Yeah, a lot of stuff in my memory that for some reason today I'm not accessing very well. I don't know why. What's that
Maybe
big
you're
grin for?
tired.
Yeah, I think I am. I didn't have a good sleep last night. For reasons unknown. There are some nights I sleep beautifully, and other nights I don't sleep well at all. I took a little teeny nap this morning in that chair over there. Maybe 20 minutes, something like that, and that seemed to help a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But the business of good quality sleep, I think I do better than most people do.
Yeah.
But every now and then it is. I'm in bed and I think I'm asleep, but I'm not. If there are 5 levels of sleep, I'm at the very first half.
Yeah. Not getting good rest.
Yeah.
Now, what about the first time you ever found out a woman?
Mrs. Doyle. Oh.
What'd she do?
Well, I was
What
out in the
happened?
barn. I'd been jumping in the hay.
Was it your barn?
No, theirs. Geez, we didn't have any hay in our barn. Anyway, I usually jumped in the hay with my buddies, but I was jumping in the hay by myself. And I heard the doors open in by the house, and I jumped down and I hid behind a big vertical beam, like this. And she didn't see me, and she came marching out, and she did a big fart when she went by. And I couldn't believe that women did that. And I learned.
When did you learn about perspective? When somebody was higher and they could see your bicycles?
There were 2 little lessons about that. One was the kayak lesson. My brother and I were out in the water kayaking, and we'd made a sail for this little kayak that my father had built. And it was, I think we had an alder mast and then a square sail with an alder or a sumac up top and another one down on the bottom, and the sail was a laminated bed sheet stitched together with a burlap bag, so it'd be more rugged. So we went all the way out toward Lane Island. And we were coming back in, and it was low tide. Or getting toward low tide. And the river, right where it goes like this, Cousins River goes that way, and Royal River comes in like this, and then goes like that up to Yarmouth. And we lived up Royal River. And my brother and I decided to cut off. There was a motorboat, coming along. It turned out it was the Drinkwater sisters, but it was about a 35-foot beautiful wooden motorboat with a captain and a smokestack, and the sisters, Drinkwater sisters, not Winslow, Drinkwater sisters, were up in a little seat. I don't know if you've ever seen a boat like that, an old motorboat with an aft cabin where you could sit if it was raining, and the captain's place, and then a cabin down under where you could go and sleep if you wanted to, or cook a meal. But boop, up through the deck, way forward, if you climbed up through there, you could get to a leather padded seat for 2 people up there. And it had a snap cover that you could put over when you were done using it. Anyway, they were up there sitting where it's quiet because you can't hear the smokestack. They went by us. I didn't know who it was. And so we decided we were going to take a shortcut down over the mudflat because it wasn't too shallow. We did. We made it. And we got a good puff of wind, and we were coming right up like that, right alongside this motorboat that's putting along before the wind died out. And the women looked, and one of them said to the other, Alice probably said to her sister, "Isn't that the Cossin boys?" And the sister looked and said, "I do believe it is." And Alice said, "I bet that mother doesn't know they're out here." And at that moment, the wind died, and Drinkwater's boat kept going. Well, what they did when they got home was they called my mother. So we got into on the west side of the breakwater, where we got out of the boat, and we hauled the boat up across the mud flats and into the grass and a little bit up a little hill, and turned it over where we usually left it with the paddles underneath it. Started walking toward the house. "Boys," looked up there, and on top of the little rise was my mother. "Come up here." And no, I think that she said, "Have you been out in that kayak?" And we said, "What kayak?" And then she said, "Come up here." So we went up there. She said, "Turn around." Turned around, and there was the kayak gleaming above the grass, all wet and shiny down there below us. And when you're a little kid and you're down there with the tall grass, you can't see that thing.
Do you think you're all hidden?
Yeah. So anyway, the other time was we were jumping in the hay. There was a whole bunch of us. Pete Jones, Timmy McDonald, and probably 3 other kids. And we were in the Fells barn. I remember that really well. The Fellses always went to Florida in the winter, and I think it was in the fall or the early spring. And we parked our bicycles in the tall grass where you can't see those things. And the handlebars stick up like that when you leave your bicycle on the side of it. You can't see it because you can't see it, you know. So we're jumping in the hay, and all of a sudden we hear Lester Graham's voice on his loudspeaker.
Who's Lester Graham?
Sheriff. And he said, "You boys come out of that barn." Gotta just stay still. "Jay Corson and Timothy McDonald, I know you're in there. Come right out here right now." Geez, Timmy and I looked at each other, and we started marching. We went right out. Went right up there. And he said, "You boys been jumping in the hay. How many other people are there with you?" And nobody, it's just us. "Turn around." We were up on the, "Come up here," he said. So we went up over the little bank, and he said, "Turn around." And we looked around, and there were 6 little handlebars sticking above the grass. "And you boys didn't bring all those bicycles there, did you?" He didn't say that, but we knew that was in his mind. "So you go in there and get the rest of those boys. Right now." Well, we were able to get all the boys, except for Pete Jones, who was afraid of his father because his father gave spankings. And I can't remember how it was all resolved in the end. We finally got him to come out. He was terrified. And we all took off in different directions and faced our punishments.
Did you get in trouble?
I don't think so.
Oh. So were you allowed to go in other people's barns?
They never knew.
So you did it often.
Very often.
What about shot in your butt?
Oh, that was at Doyle's barn. That's where we went most of the time. In fact, I don't think we went to the Fells barn more than a couple of times. Doyle's barn was closer and had better hay. And it was at night. We weren't in the hay. We were up on the roof.
Uh-huh.
And he came out into the barn and he said, "Oh, I gotta get you boys now," because he could hear us up on the roof.
Uh-huh.
And he said, he used to say, I'm gonna cut your ears off and put iron ones on you. I told you about the Iron Ear Hospital, didn't I?
Tell me again.
Okay, so anyway, I thought, well, iron ears. And one day I saw a sign, and I don't know if I could read it then, or if somebody read it. Maybe I said, "What's that?" And they said, "That's the Iron Ear Hospital." And I said, "Oh, that's where they're going to put the ears on me." So that was when I was a really little kid then.
You didn't know it was the eye and ear infirmary.
Anyway, when he started hollering down there, we all went down and we jumped into the manure pile because you could jump off the barn where Ferdinand was here. And if you came down off the barn, you get onto a more sloped roof. And you could jump off in the manure pile, which was only maybe a 4-foot drop. And if you jumped out far enough, which wasn't hard to do, you could land on the far side and tear right down over the manure banking, run out and jump across the fence. Well, I had this lantern, which I can show you. It's out in the pass-through. Had a little candle in it. And you didn't need to do much of that to make it go out. That night it wouldn't go out. So he gave me a shot of, it's rock salt it was, in the back of my right leg. And it kind of shredded up my dungarees a little bit, and it gave me noogies in the back of my right leg that I haven't forgotten. And I don't know if he jumped in the hay much after that. Probably did, but I don't remember.
Then did you say F the lantern?
What's that?
Then did you say F the lantern?
No, that was the F the lantern was way before that.
But it was the lantern that caused you the trouble that time.
Might be the same lantern, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, might be.
And
But we had other lanterns in the house.
what about the Iron Ear Infirmary? What about the pig wagon?
Here it is right here, the wagon and the kids and the pigs.
You're not allowed to read it.
Okay, I'm not going to. Mr. Drinkwater lived down the road from us in the next farm down. His farm was actually closer than the Doyles farm where Ferdinand lived. And Mr. Drinkwater was a really nice man, and when I was a really little boy, really little, how I escaped, I don't know. It must have been not much, probably either before or just after my father died. And he was in his chicken coop. He had a whole bunch of chicken coops. And I saw him in there. And I saw this thing on the door that went like this. And you could put the handle down through there. I locked him into his own chicken coop. And then I heard him say, "Boy!" He had a airy voice, you know, he'd gasp. "Boy!" And I ran away. I hid in the tall grass where nobody could see me, I was quite sure. It was on the far side. It was along toward our garden. And nobody ever, not that I remember anyway, spanked me for that. And I don't know if he told my parents that I did that, but I just don't have the recollection. But some years later, I asked him if we could have that wagon that he doesn't use anymore, the horse-drawn wagon. "Oh, sure, take it," he said. So we took the wagon, and we had put a rope on it, and 3 or 4 of us would get to it, and one of us would tow, and the other ones would sit up on the deck there and yell and things like that. And we could, if we went down a hill, take the rope and flip it up into the driver's seat and steer it down over the hill. And we did that many times, down over the hill from Mrs. Corning's, which eventually became Stickney's, down over the hill to the Four Corners. We could make it all the way to pretty close to the Four Corners. Anyway, this one day, there were pigs that we knew were free from the farm down toward Yarmouth. And lo and behold, when we were up by Stickney's or by the graveyard where my father was buried, we saw the pigs. And they were friendly little kids. And we loaded them into the back of the wagon. And we all got into the wagon. There were at least 3 of us, maybe 4 or 5. Took off down the hill to give the pigs a good ride. And because of the weight, and I was the guy steering, I was the one that fouled it. Because of the weight, the wagon behaved differently, and it started to wobble to do what we called on motorcycle a tank slapper, where a handlebar hits it here and hits it over there. And eventually the whole thing, and kids and pigs flew out through the woods off to the right-hand side there. And the pigs ran away. And if you ever saw them again, which we did a couple times, they run away. And I think they were feral pigs after that. Never captured again.
So you were the cause of those feral pigs.
Yeah.
That story reminded me of. Did you ever have a horse or ride a horse?
Oh, I rode a horse. I rode Sue the horse.
What was Sue doing?
Well, Sue was a good horse that was the Doyles horse down the road. This is a little embarrassing. And they used to let me ride Sue, and I rode her down to Vails, and Vails weren't there because they'd gone to Florida for the winter. Went down there and meandered around the meadows and all that. And I was coming back, and the handyman had closed the gate by then, and there was a big rock sculpture here, and then a tree. And I could ride between the rock thing, which held the gate, and the tree, if I kneeled on the saddle. Well, I kneeled on the saddle, and Sue wobbled or something and got scratched on the rock thing. Took off like a rocket, and there I am, pretty much standing on the rock, the sculpture, and leaning against the tree with no horse anymore. So I jumped down and walked home, and I was very embarrassed. And Sue had just gone right into her stable, and nobody was ticked off or anything like that. But she had a saddle on her. And I can't remember if anybody scolded me about, getting away from the horse like that. I remember another time, maybe the same time, because I do tend to blend stories, but I remember another time I was coming back from Vails, and at this point I was either on my bicycle or walking, and there was a bobcat or a lynx or something like that up in the tree just toward my house from that granite block thing that they put together to hold the fence. And I looked up, and there it was. It was like this. Boy, did I take off and run home, or rode my bike like the dickens. I got lots of Vail stories to tell.
Okay.
Well, another one was when I was 11 years old, and our bedroom lit right up. And I got up and I looked out the window, and the Vail's big barn, down on the peninsula, Vail's Point, was burning. And I don't think we called it in. We might have called the fire department. They said they knew about it if we did call them. But then David and I decided we were going to go down and take a look at it. Well, David was going to be riding on the crossbar thing, and I was going to be pedaling, and we were going like the dickens. And we turned from the little tar road down into the dirt road at Vails, and all of a sudden, blam! We were blinded by flashlights. And the doggone guys, they work for the fire department, volunteers, and they right in our eyes like that. And we crashed. We had quite a fall.
Did you ever have a fall with him on the handlebars or on the bike other than that?
Yeah, we did. Another time a dog came out, a chow dog, and he swung his leg back in and caught the spokes. and we went over hard, blood all over our clothes. But that night at Vail's, I don't think we kept going. I think we turned around and went home. I think they told us to. And I think we did. Went back up in the bedroom and looked, and that thing burned and burned and burned. Great big barn. And somebody said they were pretty sure, some guys, they had a word for it. A traveling salesman, basically.
Carpetbagger?
Yeah, that kind of thing. Were sleeping in there, and they'd gotten the fire going with a lantern. That was a big fire. Wow.
And what about the dog?
Well, we were going to the movies.
Yeah, okay.
We were going to the movies. David was, I don't know, he could have been on the handlebars or the crossbar. I don't know why I gave him so many rides on the bike, because maybe he wasn't allowed to take his bike to the village. But that dog, that doggone horrible chow dog, came out, which as he always did. And David swung his little foot back, and we caught the spokes, and we went right over the front. And I don't know why we always wore white shirts if we could. There was blood all over the shirts. Went to the movies anyway. That's where we were headed. And the movies cost 14 cents. And when you became 10 years old, or I think maybe it's 12 years old, it's going to cost you 25 cents. But in that week, when you turned 12, you could go every night free. But they had the same movie on Saturday and Sunday night, maybe Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So you'd go Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and Thursday, they had some love movie for grown-ups. So you go to that anyway, because it was free.
And what about the time you had your dog and it tinkled?
On the woman?
Tell that from the beginning.
Well, David and I were coming home from the movies. And I don't know, I think we were on our bicycles, because very rarely did we walk home. And Blaze was with us. He was a big old Airedale. And there was a woman waiting at a bus stop as you go up Pleasant Street Hill. Blaze went over just like she was a fire hydrant, and he lifted his foot, and he tinkled on her leg, and we took off up over that hill just like we didn't know that dog. Pretty soon he caught up with us. I won't forget that one.